Hi, I'm Jeannie. Welcome to Craft Genie and Happy New Year. It's usually this time of year that we think about organizing and reorganizing. This organizer for the back of the wall, I had so many little tools, scissors and punches and measuring tapes and things, and they were just in boxes. So rather than that, I put them in this organizer. This has 6-inch pockets are made out of clear plastic so I can easily see what's inside. The first row has 6 pockets across, the next row, and you can see I can easily see what's down inside here. The bottom 2 rows are the same 6 inches tall, but I made them wider to hold some of the wider items that I have. On mine, I also added 2 bars at the top for ribbons because I have so many ribbons. Put a nice sturdy dowel inside the size that'll fit through your ribbon hole, and you have them there. If you're going to put ribbons on yours, make sure you put them up high, because if you have little ones in the house, you're going to find them going, and you have to go back and wind them back up. This particular one is 24 inches wide. My door is 30 inches, and I wanted a little space on both sides, so measure yours accordingly. And it's 58 inches tall. So let's go to my cutting table, and this is what we're going to build today. We're going to show you how to make one of these. Okay, to make this project, you're going to need your backing material, you're going to need vinyl to make the pockets, and then you'll need some edging for it. So here's the backing material. It is 24 inches wide, and it is 58 inches long. And you want something that's a little bit thicker, like a duck cloth or something with some weight to it that's going to be sturdy. You will have vinyl strips. This was, I believe, 10 or 12 gauge vinyl. It comes in a roll like this, and you can just go into the fabric store and they'll cut off as much as you want. These strips are 6 inches tall, and they are 48 inches wide. They are twice as wide as your backing fabric. That's important. And you're going to cut out 5 of these strips. And then you're also going to need some edging material. You can, if you want to just buy bias tape, you can do that. That's fine. I actually made strips, not on the bias because it doesn't go around any curves. What I did is I cut 2-inch long strips, folded the edges in, and then folded them one more time. And like I said, you will need about 13.5 yards of this. So let's get started. You're going to start at the bottom of your fabric, and we're going to go ahead and measure where all of these pockets are going to go so we can just start sewing them. I want to come up a 1/2 inch. This is going to be our seam allowance here. And this is just a chalk. It will actually rub right off when you're done. And I'm marking this so that when we go to put our shelves on, we know exactly where to put them. Okay, each pocket is 6 inches tall. So there's our 6 inches to the top. And we've got 4 inches between each pocket to the next one. So here's the next 4 inches. So basically from your bottom, we're going to go up 10 inches and mark it. 10 inches. 10 inches. That's our first shelf. And we're going to do the same thing to mark this piece all the way up. Again, this is a chalk that will rub right out of your fabric. That's our second shelf. And I'm going to go ahead and get this all marked up. Okay, I've marked my fabric. Like I showed you, I marked off the first 1/2 inch at the bottom, and then every 10 inches I drew a line with my chalk, another 10 inches, another line, and I marked 4 more lines up here. This line is going to actually be the bottom of where the vinyl goes, and the top will just fit in place. Now, before we start sewing the vinyl down, first thing we're going to do is take our vinyl and put our edges onto it. This is that strip that I told you I made. And what you're going to do is wrap it right around the edge of your vinyl, just line it up to the end. Don't worry about the edge being raw, we'll cover that later. And you're going to go through and just stitch it right along the edge, making sure that when you do stitch that you catch both sides so it holds it in place. So let me go get these sewn down. I'll be right back. Okay, I have sewn the edge on all of my pieces of plastic. You can see along the top of there. Now we're going to go ahead and put it onto our backing. Now I'm not going to start at the bottom, even though we measured from the bottom, because as we put it in the machine I want this out of the way. So I'm going to go all the way to my first marking. Okay, we're going to measure out our pockets. Remember, these are going to be 4-inch pockets, so let me go ahead and put a pin at the 4-inch mark. There we go. And then down at the end, let me turn this pin around. Now our pocket, the vinyl, as you recall, is twice as long. So we're going to measure this off in 8-inch increments. I'm going to find the exact center. I'm going to put a little pin top and bottom. And I didn't mention earlier, but the reason for the binding across the top is not just to make it pretty, which it does add a little bit of prettiness to it, but that also adds some strength to it as well, that the vinyl won't just tear because you've got this fabric covering it. So let's measure this off in 8-inch blocks. And you can either pin it or you can mark it with a Sharpie. Whichever you prefer. There's the first one. Second one. Okay, I've marked the increments, top and bottom, 4-inch segments, and then I've marked this all the way across in 8-inch segments. So you want to line it up to the bottom on the line that we drew earlier, and we're going to pin our vinyl in place. I'm going to pin it top and bottom because you want to make sure that it stays. And make sure that you follow your line. Now you can see I'm lining up my vinyl, the 8-inch mark on my vinyl with the 4-inch mark on my fabric. And I'm going to pin that in place, top and bottom. And don't worry about punching holes in your vinyl because you're going to be sewing it anyway. Next 8-inch mark, bring it up here. Yes, you're going to see a big gap that is supposed to be there. And you know, if it's off by a little 1/32 of an inch, it's not going to affect the overall, so don't be too frightened by this step. Again, make sure that you follow your line so that the bottom stays straight where it's supposed to. Now, one thing I didn't mention with the vinyl when you're sewing it, like the stitches across here, you're going to loosen up your sewing length of your stitch just a little bit. You don't want it too tight of a stitch. Okay, our vinyl is pinned in place, and you can see these little loops of vinyl. That is what you're supposed to have. When you sew on vinyl, this is going to want to stick in your machine. As you try to sew it through, the vinyl is going to catch and just not be able to go through. So what I always do is use a piece of thin tissue paper. It can be like the paper that you wrapped presents in. This paper happened to have come with the vinyl, came on the back of it. So when I go to lay it down in my sewing machine, I will put the vinyl over it. The beauty of it is you can kind of see through it, so you can see where you are. Go ahead and do your stitch all the way across the vinyl. Pull your pins out, of course. And then when you're done stitching it, just tear away the vinyl, and you'll have a nice stitch there, and it won't have caught in the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine. We'll get these 6 lines sewn down, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, I'm at my sewing machine. You can see the vinyl is right on the edge where it's going to go. I've got my tissue paper over the top, and we're going to do just a little 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Be sure to do your stitch and go backwards. Lock that stitch in because this is the point that's going to have some pressure on it. And like I mentioned before, you will just tear away the vinyl. And there's your stitch. And it didn't catch on the machine, and you've got a really nice stitch. We're going to move to the next one, which is right here in the middle. And same thing, you want to put your vinyl back down. Line it up to where I want it. Again, be sure to back stitch over the top. I can feel my pin right here, so I can just go straight to my pin. And you can actually feel the vinyl under here, so you can see when you've gotten to the end of it. And again, okay, that was the final one. And again, we're going to tear away the tissue paper. And I'm sorry, I think earlier I said tear away the vinyl. No, you don't tear away the vinyl, you tear away the tissue paper. And let's go back to the cutting board, and I'll show you how to fold this, and we'll go on to the rest of it. Okay, it's sewn in place. We're ready to finish off the first row. Now, you can see we have the great big loops. What we're going to do is, about halfway through, you're going to tuck in the ends. I know it's a little hard to see with the plastic, but I've tucked in about 1 inch, folded it down, about 1 inch over here, folded it down. And you're going to pin that in place. You can tape it in place, but the tape sometimes leaves a little sticky mark. Let me show that to you again. Bring it in just about 1 inch, fold it back on itself, and just about 1 inch here, fold it back on itself. And what we're doing is we're creating a little pocket. If these were just flat, you'd have a very flat pocket and you couldn't put much in here. This way we've got a nice little opening. So we've got our second one done. I'm going to pin that in place. Tighten. Now I'm going to go all the way across. I'm going to fold each of these pockets down, pin them into place. We're going to go back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a stitch right along the bottom, just, 1/4 inch up from the bottom. Use your tissue paper over the top so it doesn't stick to it. Then, before we're done with the sewing machine, you're going to take the same trim. This time I want you to open it up. You're not going to leave it double folded. Open it up, lay it over the stitch that you just did, start right at the edge, and you're going to stitch it down top and bottom all the way across that stitch that you just made. So again, you're going to fold it in place, pin these down. If you prefer, you can tape them, but all the way across, stitch across it, the whole thing using your tissue paper, tear away the tissue paper, and then put your trim open right over the top of it and stitch it top and bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. and do my other top 3 6 pockets, and then we'll come back and do the 4 pockets at the bottom. Okay, I have all 3 of the top rows done. These are the rows that have the 6 pockets each. As you can see, I sewed them down, I pleated them, and then I stitched them in place and then put the decorative trim across the bottom. This also helps to keep them from tearing. It adds a little bit of strength to it. So the last thing we're going to do, or the next thing we're going to do, is put the 2 bottom pockets on. These are done the same way, but just a little bit different because these are only going to have 4 wide pockets instead of the 6 smaller pockets. And then as you do this, you also want to just do one at a time. Do one, finish it, sew it, get the bottom done, and then go to the next one. If you try to pin them all in place, you're going to have something that's full of pins. It's going to be hard to work with. So let's go ahead and measure off here. And in this time, we're going to measure off every 6 inches, not every 4 inches. I've got my 4 big pockets marked off. We will take our piece of vinyl and again find the center of it. And now this time we want just the center of it, so we want to go in 12 inches. 12 inches to the top. Inches to the bottom. So we've got the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and sew each of these sections. We'll also come back and do the same thing with folding the pockets, stitching the bottom, so it's going to be done exactly the same way, but 4 pockets instead of the 3 or 6. Once we're done with that, we'll put the final pocket at the bottom and we'll come back and show you that. So let me go ahead and get this to the sewing machine. Okay, the last 2 rows are down, except for the trim. I've got the trim on this one. No trim here just yet. And just a reminder, you do sew the plastic down first and then add the trim to the top of it. Because it's the bottom, remember that little 1/2 inch that we saved there? We are going to flip this over and take our trim and we're going to pin it at that halfway point. I'm going to pin it just a little ways to show you what we're going to do. It's going to be actually right below the vinyl. You will pin it and then stitch it all the way across. When you turn it back over, you will take this piece, flip it up, sew it across the top. That's going to finish off the bottom of our piece. So that'll be done. Okay, and then to finish off the sides, we will take our trim again, fold the ends in so there's no raw edge, and we're going to start at the bottom. You're going to flip it over and sew it all the way up the edge. It's going to be sewn on both sides. You're going to go all the way up one side, all the way up the other side, and then we are just about done with this project. So let me stitch all this part down, and I'll be right back and we'll finish it off. Okay, you can see I've got the trim sewn across the bottom, and I put the trim all the way down both sides of it. The last thing we're going to do is put a little casing up here at the top. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put a wooden dowel, about a 1/2 inch wooden dowel through the top, and that's going to be to hang it from. So, even though it's a 1/2 inch dowel, I want to leave plenty of space. I'm going to make about a 2-inch casing. Okay, I've sewn the upper casing, and I actually stitched it down twice just for extra strength. You would insert your wooden dowel, like I said, about a 1/2 inch or so dowel. I don't happen to have a wooden dowel, so broom handle is playing the part of wooden dowel. Then you will have these hooks that you'll find at Target, Walmart, different places. You hang them on a bathroom door or something. They have a little loop on them. And you'll put 2 hooks behind your door, set your dowel on top of it, and there you have it. It's done and ready to start organizing. So this project is simple. It's an easy project to do, but it's not fast. Just know that this is going to be maybe a 4 or 5 hour project. What really slows you down is having to put the paper down over the plastic to sew it. So if you were to have sewn these pockets in fabric, it would have gone quicker. but you wouldn't have the see-through ability. So it's, like I said, an easy project. Give it a try and get organized.